So, talking about the history of the Vickers, this thing is interesting. Once again, as always, whenever I discuss this, I've got my notes down here that I have to sit here and read, so I'm not always. I wish there was a mount to where I could mount paperwork right here next to the camera. That way I'm just looking over here and not down here, but I digress. So, the Vickers was in service a very long time. I know with the British Empire it was one, if not the one, that is the longest serving firearm in the British military. It got started in, I believe, 1912 is when they adopted it and quit service of it in the British military in about 68. Okay? Now, that's not to say that some of her former colonies were continuing to use it all the way through today, but at least the British, that's as far as it went. Now, the Vickers is the most well-known machine gun throughout the First World War, and its sheer ability to fire hundreds of rounds and to neutralize so many men on the battlefield really was a testament to its reliability and so on and so forth. So it was originally developed by an American who became a British citizen early 1900s, and his name was Hiram Maxim. Now, he developed the Maxim machine gun, but it began to get updated and adapted and to keep up with weapons of the time. Because you have to remember, at this time, post-American Civil War, all the way through World War I, there was a lot of firearm development that happened. Okay, whether it was through the ammunition itself, manufacturing, metallurgy, things of that nature. A lot happened in that little short span. The Vickers machine gun was supplied to the British Army by the company Vickers, Son, and Maxim. Okay? Now, the Vickers is a water-cooled machine gun. That basically means you have the barrel and then it is wrapped in a cylinder. In this case, it is a stamped sheet metal with ridges. That's a tank, and it holds about a gallon. I couldn't really sit here and go, yep, that's 1 gallon, because I spilt some. I'm not going to lie, okay? But it's about a gallon, right? And the reason that was done was to keep the barrel thinner, so less material was needed. So water boils at about 212 degrees, if I remember correctly, Fahrenheit, and then it boils off and becomes steam. Well, they would have a hose running from it down to a box, but it's not really a box. It is a water condensing can. So the steam would go down the pipe, condense back into the water can, then they were able to take that water and put it back in the gun. But since water has a boiling temperature of 200 and some odd degrees, that means that's about how hot the barrel can get. So yeah, that's what made it handy, and was also a downside of it as well, because water is heavy and you're not always in a situation to where you can have water. So there are reports out there of men peeing in the Vickers. I'm sure that smelled wonderful when it began to burn off. Yeah. Now, of course, the Vickers is in .303 ammo, or .303 caliber, I should say, but which was the exact same as their main battle rifle. So that was a major logistics thing at that point in time. Now, the average fire rate was about 450 rounds. I know they had aircraft models that went even higher than that, but let's just say 450 rounds. Now, the weight of this gun, unloaded, without the tripod, without any water in it, it's about 20 kilograms, right? So multiply that by 2.2 and you sit here and figure all that out. Then the tripod, depending on what version of the tripod, because they had several different ones, okay, was between 16 and 18 kilograms. Now, all of this weight was to really support some of the recoil. It's not a heavy recoiling gun, as you will see in the video, but having that weight, you'll also see that it's not bouncing around. So there were a few other guns, I'm not going to get into it, that were out at about the same time, that when you shot them, you said, okay? So accuracy kind of sucked there. With this Vickers, it really is just tap, 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 tap. You know, so that was really good. A lot of that had to do with the weight. They also played with the muzzle booster that's at the end, the little cone-looking thing, that also helped mitigate some of the recoil. Like I said, they were added to planes. Some of them had 4, some of them had, I think the most was 4 on each wing, so 8, if I remember correctly. And you have to sit here and remember that we're not just talking about World War I. You know, there would just be 1 or 2 mounted. It was World War II that got strapped to bigger airplanes, and that's when they added more. Don't think biplane having 8 max. That would be cool, now that I think about it. I don't know how it would take off, but yeah, but the belts are 250 rounds each, right? Now, I talked about this a little bit earlier. Some of the advantages of it was the Vickers was extremely reliable, and most of that was due to the high quality of manufacturing. And so when it was in the trenches, when it was in everywhere, it was simple to use. The main part that would wear out was the barrel, but most of the crews would have at least 1 extra barrel, sometimes 2. And yeah, as long as you kept feeding her belts, she would keep rocking and rolling. We'll keep refinishing her water, she'd keep rocking and rolling. So yeah. Sorry, just got to sit here and find where I'm at in my notes. Oh, here we go. So another really cool advantage was the ease, which it's not easy by today's standards, but at the time, very easy to sit here and, oh, well, our lock, as it's called, which is the whole mechanism that, you know, is the elevator that moves it down, as well as the firing mechanism and that kind of thing. Ours is broken. Well, you can legitimately pull it up, twist it a little bit, take it off. Hey, Mr. Armorer, here, fix that. I'm taking this one. Boop, boop, boop. Keep the gun running, right? Oh, we need to sit here and pull the barrel. So we take the lock out, we take the back off, slide it out, slide another one in, put the lock back on there. Ta-da, we're up and going. So that was a major advantage compared to some other firearms that were out on the market at the time, especially during World War I. The entire gun would be taken out of service, sent back to an armorer, and sometimes would take weeks to get that gun back on the front lines. So yeah. Now, disadvantages. The weight, okay? Just sit here and think you having to run to set up a position, and you've got to carry this 20-kilogram heavy gun while you're getting shot at, while you have other things strapped to you. Okay? So, yeah. Because it was usually... So in the beginning, the Vickers was really supposed to have a 6-man team. 2 men to carry the equipment. So 1 man carried the gun, 1 man carried the tripod. They would usually carry a little bit of ammo with them, maybe a belt, and maybe an extra barrel. Then you would have 2 more men that would carry ammunition and water and more stuff. Okay? So maybe the gunner couldn't carry a barrel, but he could carry a water tank. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, and then you would have 2 spare men. Now those spare men's job was to help. They would often carry more ammo and that kind of thing, but they were also trained on the gun, because if, you know, the man behind the gun goes down, we have to have a man to replace him. Okay, so that's 6 men tied up with 1 gun. So some military officials didn't like that, right? Even though with the fire rate of the Vickers, and as accurate as it is with a skilled crew, is equivalent to greater than 40 riflemen. Okay? So you got 40 riflemen or 6 men. To me, that's pretty simple. But obviously the military disagreed and finally just cut it down to 4 with no spare men. So, and the spare men would then become just basic riflemen, and that was pretty much it. Another downside, it wasn't so much during World War I, but later, and we talked about it a little bit, was the cooling system. So even the way of changing out barrels by World War II coming around, it was outdated, okay? And then having to keep water flowing, they saw pretty big issues with that when they were in the deserts and that kind of thing. So, yeah. Okay, so now I'm actually going to read from a report that came out August 26, 1916, of the British Army's 100th Company of the Machine Gun Corps, who managed to fire 10 Vickers machine guns for 12 solid hours. Over these 12 hours, they collectively managed to fire 999,750 rounds. One belt from being 1,000,000 rounds over a 12-hour period. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, this was for a test. No. The 10 Vickers had to sustain fire over a 12-hour period on an area 2,000 yards away. 2,000 yards away. To prevent German troops from forming a counterattack while the British Army attack was in progress. There was a commander, I'm probably going to butcher this, Hutchinson, made a promise to the men of the machine gun crew. Whoever fired the most rounds would receive 5 francs each of the crew as a reward. Now, the cooling mechanism, as we've said here and said before, needed water for these 12 hours for 10 Vickers, and they had nowhere near enough water. The men of the Corps decided to use all the water from surrounding areas, their drinking water as well as the contents of every latrine bucket. Ew. Any liquid would do for them. The men also had to replace the machine gun barrels frequently. and had worked their way through 100 new barrels. That's a new barrel for each Vickers every roughly hour and 20 minutes. The winning crew of the 5 franks each, so each member of the crew got 5 franks. Each member of that crew fired about 120,000 rounds over the 12-hour period. Yeah. So this just proves the reliability. And it's also sat here and said the Vickers machine guns were still in perfect working order. I'm pretty sure they would be after a good cleaning, because I'm sure that stunk. Latrine water probably stunk, with no repairs needed after 12 solid hours. Okay? I don't know how else to put it. Okay? Now, since we sat here and talked about the machine gun corps, let's go into a little bit of history about it. Okay, so I'm going to have to walk with the cameras and everything else, but yeah, this is it, right? So this is the Vickers, okay? And it's all of its glory. Now, the first thing I'm going to kind of show you is some loading procedures. So let me switch over to this other camera. Ignore the background here, okay? This is my unorganized parts bin. It's organized chaos, okay? So don't judge me on this, okay? And also just don't judge me on everything that's over here. But the customer did supply a cloth belt. This cloth belt, right, if I'm reading everything right, was made in July of 1945. And she's in pretty good shape, I would say. But basically you would have ammo in here. You see that there's individual pockets, right? So there's a little pocket, so on and so forth. But you would take your green tag, which I know it's kind of hard to see, bring it in, and you would bring it all the way up to the first round. You would grab, still pulling on the belt a little bit, bring it back, and it would sit here and just start cycling, right? And then of course you have, let me move my big fat fingers, this is your safety, right? And this would be your trigger. So you pull this back and then squeeze forward. I don't like dry firing weapons, so don't ask. But something that's cool is this rail here. This is the rear sight. It goes all the way up to 2,900 meters. Okay? Let me see if I can angle this up a little bit so you can really get a grasp, yeah, of just how tall this is. So this really was indirect fire, very artillery-ish, right? So, yeah. Now I'm going to take you through just kind of a basic teardown of everything. I'm going to switch over to the other camera. It's a little easier to move in order to show a lot of that. Alright, so we have this little guy here. I'm hoping I stay in frame. I can't do this and see my computer screen. But you just kind of move it out of the way, and you can actually remove the whole feeding mechanism, okay? And down here, that's your chamber, okay? So basically what happens is when the action works, it sits here and pulls the shell back, it drops it down, and then it loads it in. You see, I hope. and then that comes right back up and grabs the next round. Okay, so we can close that. Then we'll kind of move back here a little bit. We're going to lift up on the back, and now I'm not going to take all of this apart. Okay, if you want a disassembly video on it, there's one already out that is pretty good. They move fast because they do it a lot. You see what I'm saying? But it works pretty good. It's a pretty good video. But this is the lock, right? Now, some of you may be sitting here thinking, how does it snap back forward, right? There's no spring in here. And you'd be absolutely right. There is no spring in here. It's over here. It's underneath this, right? And this is a mighty big spring, okay? And you can tension it or loosen it with this little guy right here, right? This little, right? And that will, if this was full auto, increase or decrease the sickle rate, right? So yeah, but you can kind of see here your trigger mechanism, right? So that piece basically pulls on this piece, right? Which then pulls this piece, so on and so forth, right? So a little complicated. Does that make for a really good trigger pull? Hell no. But once again, it's a machine gun. So now I can put this back in. Close that down. So yeah, and now I want to sit here and spend a little bit of time talking about the actual tripod, okay? So let me angle it down here. And yes, that ammo crate that you see in the background is an actual ammo crate that the customer gave me, saying that it was full of belts. It's not. It's on stripper clips and bandoliers, okay? But the ammo dates from 1960. So I'm going to be using good new manufactured ammo, but I will probably try to use some of that as well, because the customer wants that to work. But a couple of things that I've already pointed them out to the customer is like the elevation, right, pin that's supposed to go through here. It's missing on his. They're not expensive. I want to say they're like $40. He's got one ordered, so we're just going to have to sit here and use our imagination. But when it's fixed like this, you would honestly use this to raise and lower. And you see, it's not fine adjustments really. I mean, yeah, you can move it slow, right? But I mean, even if we brought it all the way down, that's it, right? Right about there. Yeah. And then we can bring it all the way up if we wanted to. Because this is what I think is cool, is it's kind of a double deal. Double screw. I can't remember what they actually call that. Right? But it's still nice and smooth. I think I'll have to re-look. But I think this one, it is marked 1922 right here. Okay, now that could be the model or that could be the actual manufactured year. I'm not 100% certain. But even on the legs, let me see if it's, yes, that is in view. So they've got teeth on them, right? And if you look closely, even they're marked, 10, 20, 30, so on and so forth. So you could even work on changing the angles that way. Now I talked about the machine gun core, right? And them setting up courses of fire. If you can look and see, yeah, you see on this disc it even has, you know, angles, okay? And there's a stop somewhere. I'm not sure if it's on this model or on this one or not, okay? But it would actually come to a hard stop, right? So you wouldn't be able to just sit here and go, wee! It would just come to a hard stop. Of course, you got ways of putting water in, getting water out, so on and so forth. Alright, so the day is pretty much over today. So I am hoping tomorrow to actually be able to move that massive behemoth outside and actually start firing it. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But I told the customer this, and I'm going to say it here as well. I have read and seen where a lot of people sit here and say, oh, well, since it's semi-auto, you don't have to fill it full of water. I kind of disagree with that, okay? Part of it being to really get the full effect. You know, they would have water in there, and it's really to get the right feel, okay? And number two is, I know how I would shoot the gun if it were mine. And I would sit here and know where that trigger breaks, where it resets, and try to make it sound as full auto as I can get, okay? So those barrels aren't particularly thick, they're just not. But the reason for that is because, hey, it's going to be covered in water, and water only gets so hot, can take so much heat until it turns into steam, right? And then you have the condenser and blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to fill it up full of water. Hopefully she'll hold water, and I can actually sit here and have a little bit of fun with her, right? But if not, if she doesn't hold water, I'll do enough just to satisfy me with, you know, the functionality and everything else. So yeah, that's it. So just hang tight, because I've got to wait till tomorrow. But for you, it should be right about, oh, I don't know, now. Alrighty. So we got her set up here. I've got a belt of ammo. Now, full disclosure, I have already shot it 5-10 times because it would be embarrassing to it not to work. So, let's go. Yeah, that's fine. But it is hot out here. So, yeah, we'll finish this up inside. Alright, so that's about it. Now, I'm really happy something didn't happen. So, this ammunition, so when the customer brought in this Lewis gun, he was like, oh, and here is a belt of ammunition, and he handed me an actual ammo can, right? So it was the plywood with the rivets, brown paint, yellow lettering, right? So I'm going, cool. I open it up. There's a metal spam can there. That's fine. Grab the handle, peel it back. And I got these. Yeah. And if you look closely, Yeah. Now, that meant that in each one of those pouches was 2 of these, 5 rounds on each, that I then had to take off, and were separated by a little cardboard piece. Okay? But whenever they package this ammunition from back in the day, they oftentimes put a lacquer on it, for lack of better terminology. And yeah, it was green and sticky. When I mean sticky, think of the floors at a movie theater. You know what I mean? Just ew. So I got to sit here for a bunch of rounds with a toothbrush, a little bit of Ballistol on there, and a rag. I don't even know where my rag ran off to. And clean each one of them, and then hand load. So let me sit here and actually kind of pull, because I've still got ammunition loaded on here, because it is hot outside. To say that it is hot in Mississippi right now would be an understatement. So you see the belt was actually made July of 45. Okay? It's marked again. So words go down, thick edge is where bullet's at, and I have to insert and then really kind of push it in there to get it nice and tight, right? Yeah. Now they have loaders for these things, but unfortunately the client does not own a loader. I sat here and asked about it, and he just points to his son, who's 15. And I'm going, okay, that works. That works. And yes, I know I'm still sweating profusely. Yes, the air conditioning is on, but it is Mississippi. It is 98 degrees today with about 100,000,000% humidity. This is the time of low pressure steam. We no longer have air, we have low pressure steam. So yeah, I am going to wait till later on this evening, to be 100% honest. And I'm probably going to finish off this belt. Why? Because it's super fun. And clean it, send it back to the customer. So anyways, I hope y'all have enjoyed this video. I have really enjoyed working on this gun. And if y'all have any questions, comment below. I'll try to get to them as fast as possible. So yeah, anyways, y'all have a good one.